A one-year-old boy becomes the country's youngest MIS-C case. The rising price of food is hitting Taiwan hard. We look at why. The G7 announces a $600 billion alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And train spotters give an emotional farewell to a veteran of Taiwan's railways. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. A one-year-old boy has become Taiwan's latest victim of multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, or MIS-C. The syndrome develops in children 2 to 6 weeks after catching COVID. Taiwan has now 15 recorded cases. The government also approved COVID vaccines for those 6 months and older. Bing Wang reports.
Taiwan's health officials have confirmed a one-year-old has developed MIS-C, the youngest so far. MIS-C, or multi-system inflammatory syndrome, causes severe inflammation of organs and tissues in children 2 to 6 weeks after they've had COVID.
那这也是我们累积到现在15例的 MIS-C 的儿童个案当中年纪最小的一位。那目前累积的儿童重症人数是70名，其中死亡跟先前一样是维持20人。
Of these severe cases, 21 children developed encephalitis, or inflammation of the brain. As for overall infections, the weekly trend has dropped, but health officials are not quite optimistic cases will continue to trend downward.
上次我们不是说6月底就希望跌破万例嘛，就大致上是没有，也许可能要到7月底啦，就是说可能这个的下降速度没有像大家想那么快。BA.4 跟 BA.5 在未来可能8月以后会有这个可能的稍微上扬的这个部分。
Less than 100 cases of the Omicron variants BA4 and BA5 have been reported in Taiwan, but in the US and Europe, they have already become the dominant strains.
But based on the way it's spreading so fast in Europe and in the US, we do think that it's going to be very contagious. And anytime you have a contagious infection, there's always higher chances for increased hospitalization, ICU, as well as deaths.
To prepare for the new variants, the government purchased 2 million doses of the Novavax vaccine. 500,000 are expected to arrive before June ends. The government hopes older people will be more willing to get this vaccine because of its fewer side effects. With the rollout of vaccines for children, Taiwan hopes to prepare the entire population from the new variants. Kamashu and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Inflation is spooking economies across the world. But while core inflation in Taiwan isn't as high as other countries, the pace of food inflation is the second highest in Asia. Our reporter James Chater looks at why, when it comes to food, prices in Taiwan are under such pressure.
Volunteers at this Taipei workshop are packing happy boxes, government-subsidized lunches for those in Taiwan struggling with rapidly rising food prices.
现在的外面的物价其实是很恐怖的，也就是说呢，他也希望更多的民众呢不要因为通膨的压力然后一直买到外面很贵的便当。
At a price of only $2, these happy boxes have been offered in more than 70 locations across Taiwan since mid-June. It's part of the Agricultural Bureau's Zero Hunger Plan as food inflation skyrockets. With the cost of an average set lunch, a staple meal for Taiwanese now nearly double that of a happy box, the subsidized lunchboxes are even distributed to neighborhoods with high numbers of poorer elderly people.
那疫情期间呢，有的家里确诊，那必须减少收入，那又要多支出的话，这个生活上就会比较拮据。
Core inflation in Taiwan is running at a 10-year high. And while that's on the lower end for Asian countries, Taiwan's food inflation rate of 6.9% is currently the second highest in the region. Taiwan is caught in a perfect food inflation storm. The pandemic and now war in Ukraine is putting pressure on food prices everywhere. But in Taiwan specifically, all that's made worse by a lack of self-sufficiency in the products which form the basis of the diet here. Taiwan imports key commodities like wheat and soybeans, leaving food prices largely at the mercy of international forces.
We're talking about the self-sufficiency ratio of, for example, 0.1% for wheat, 0.2% for soybeans, and 3% for corn here. So this means that most of these products are actually supported by global production. And if we are seeing a heavy fluctuation in international price, and of course it will also affect prices in Taiwan.
Like many other places in Taiwan, the menu board of Chen Weiting's family restaurant reflects that more expensive reality. They recently had to raise prices for the first time in 5 years.
有些人是以为我们已经涨过了，然后他就会说：“哎，怎么又再涨一次？”这样，然后我们就还蛮无奈的，就是说我们只有涨一次而已，而且其他人已经涨2、3次了，对，我们只有涨一次而已，所以就有点委屈。
TaiwanPlus asked both Taiwan's Agricultural Council and Economic Ministry how else they plan to tackle Taiwan's rampant food inflation, but did not receive a response. The Happy Boxes project will run at least until the end of the year, a small but welcome respite from the bitter taste of rising food prices. Klein Wang and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
New Taipei City Fire officials say 3 people who were trapped inside their burning home couldn't get out because there were no fire exits.
逃生是3楼的后侧，是没有对外窗可以做逃生。我们消防人员也没有办法从外侧进入抢救。
The blaze broke out in the middle of the night. 1 person managed to escape. 3 others were trapped on the upper floors of the building. Firefighters managed to put out the fire quickly, but the 3 inside had lost consciousness from smoke inhalation. Emergency services were only able to resuscitate 1 of them. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. The leaders of the G7 group of countries have denounced China in a statement that contained a dramatic increase in references to Beijing. The statement criticized China for its relations with Russia and its human rights record. The leaders from the world's wealthiest democracies also accuse Beijing of economic coercion, something China's foreign ministry has since denied. The post-summit communiqué mentioned China more than 14 times, up from just 4 times last year. One of the biggest announcements of this year's G7 summit was a new $600 billion development fund, one that aims to offer a democratic alternative to Chinese investment for developing nations. Taiwan is among the countries that have expressed a willingness to join the new partnership. Our reporter Ed Moon takes a closer look at the announcement and how it compares to Beijing's similar Belt and Road initiative.
$600 billion. That's how much US President Joe Biden and other leaders from the G7 pledged this week for a new fund to build up infrastructure in developing countries.
Today, we officially launched the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. We collectively have dozens of projects already underway around the globe.
But with the G7 facing sky-high inflation and slowing economies following COVID-19 and Russia's war with Ukraine, what has motivated them to spend big on the new project? The answer? China and its Belt and Road initiative, which has led to warnings from officials in the US and Europe over the rapid spread of Chinese influence in developing nations. First announced in 2013, the Belt and Road has been Beijing's flagship economic foreign policy under the leadership of President Xi Jinping. Its stated aim was to connect China with the world through economic development projects, a modern version of the ancient Silk Road running from Europe to East Asia. According to Chinese government data, a total of 148 countries have signed up to the Belt and Road. The largest number, 43, are in sub-Saharan Africa, followed by 35 in Europe and Central Asia, 25 in East Asia and the Pacific, 21 in Latin America and the Caribbean, 18 in the Middle East and North Africa, and 6 in South Asia. But the Belt and Road has been criticized for its financing structure, which has seen some countries burdened with debt for expensive Chinese-built infrastructure.
they are actually lending too much money to the developing countries. And these developing countries, they are not afford to pay all the debt, they borrow from China. So that will fall and then becomes the so-called debt diplomacy and debt trap in these kind of, cooperation projects.
And it's here that G7 leaders believe their new offer beats that from Beijing.
It's a chance for us to share our positive vision for the future, to let communities around the world see themselves and see for themselves the concrete benefits of partnering with democracies.
There are no official figures revealing exactly how much money China has committed to the Belt and Road, but it's believed to be over $1 trillion. That means even if the G7's new development fund reaches its target of $600 billion, it will still lag some distance behind. Instead, the world's leading democracies hope their commitment to transparency will be enough to convince developing countries to choose them over Beijing. Alex Chen and Ed Moon for TaiwanPlus.
The world's largest naval exercises have started in the seas around Hawaii and California. 26 nations and more than 25,000 personnel are taking part in the US-led RIMPAC, or Rim of the Pacific exercise. The drills are expected to involve 38 ships, 4 submarines and 170 aircraft. In December, the US Congress passed a provision in its 2022 Defense Act to invite Taiwan to RIMPAC, but the country is not listed as a participant. To find out why, I spoke earlier to William Dong, a defense researcher at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research.
Of course, the Americans have to consider the whole situation because actually, we quite know well Taiwan is very, very sensitive to Beijing. Just consider in one situation, if U.S. just bring Taiwan in, then will cause the other participant to leave the RIMPAC. Of course, I think that's American don't want to see that. I think unless there is really a serious, the security escalation in the Taiwan Strait, then I think that will make the RIMPAC participants will really consider it's really need to bring Taiwan in.
Do you expect the exercises to be about what happens if there is an attack on the Taiwan Strait?
Yeah, of course. When we see what the U.S. Defense Department and the President Biden say now, China is their main security concern in the Indo-Pacific. So I think, especially when we look in the Asia or the Indo-Pacific arena, the Taiwan issue is really bring the Americans' concerns. At the U.S., it's really worry about Beijing's kind of the expansionisms and consider what they will do in Taiwan and in the South China Sea. I think the main target, of course, I think even they don't speak it out, I think the mainly is the Beijing, it's the Communist China is the target.
Should Taiwan then be invited, at least as an observer, to these exercises, if that's the case?
And I think American, by heart, they really want to invite Taiwan. But when they consider other participants, maybe some of them are quite close to China, to be honest, and they have to consider their opinion as well. I think not only the U.S., Japan as well is quite worried about Taiwan's the situation as well. So I think it's needed to do it early than late to how to U.S. or the Japan how they practice a kind of the joint exercise or join the actions with Taiwan in case the Taiwan really have a war and they want to give help to Taiwan.
North Korea has condemned upcoming joint military drills by the US and its allies, accusing Washington of setting up an Asian version of NATO. North Korean state media released this statement just hours before NATO's annual summit in Spain. The leaders of South Korea and Japan are attending as observers for the first time and will meet with the US president to discuss North Korea. The three countries will hold a combined missile detection and tracking exercise called Pacific Dragon in August. Pyongyang accuses the US of building up tension in the Asia-Pacific region and says it will bolster its military capability in response. Taiwan's Weather Bureau says that May this year had the least amount of sunshine of any May on record. On average, the island saw 3 fewer hours of sunshine per day during the month. It was also the coolest May in over 20 years. Forecasters say that unseasonable weather is at an end and that the country could see 3 to 4 typhoons make landfall in the second half of the year. Coming up, 10 years in the making, the Taipei Performing Arts Center is about to open, and its opening act is unmissable. Details after the break.
What makes this island nation exceptionally punch way above its might? It's the fascinating human stories we heard, plus the greatest movies we saw. The enduring and painstaking past we learned, plus the beautiful people we met. The delightful cuisines we tasted, plus the coexistence of many cultures we embraced. The powerful, energizing technology we invented, plus the ancient masterpieces we preserved. The human rights we advanced, plus the motherland we called home. TaiwanPlus. We will continue to show you unheard, compelling stories that touch our hearts. Come with us as we embark on yet another unraveling journey to the world.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Turkey has agreed to back Finland and Sweden's bid to join NATO. It's the first step in what is set to be the biggest shift in European security in decades. The breakthrough came after just 4 hours of talks, just before a NATO summit began in Spain. Under the terms of the deal, Sweden will step up cooperation with Turkey on extradition requests, and both Sweden and Finland will lift restrictions on weapons sales to Turkey. Sweden and Finland applied to join NATO in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, ending a tradition of non-alignment in both countries. A criminal investigation has been opened in the US into the deaths of 51 people trapped inside an 18-wheeler truck in Texas in sweltering conditions. The victims had no water or working air conditioning in temperatures nearing 40 degrees. The driver of the truck and 2 others have been taken into custody. It's one of the deadliest smuggling attempts across the US-Mexico border in recent memory. Scientists are turning to new technology to save a coral reef in Indonesia. As John Van Trieste reports, the AI program may soon help other reefs around the world soon.
A healthy coral reef is a noisy place. The bustle of underwater life makes a loud crackling, not unlike a campfire. In all that noise is information about how the reef is doing, but it's hard for the human ear to interpret. That's where technology can help. Scientists are using underwater microphones to record a reef in Indonesia. They then feed the sounds into an AI system that can analyze them. The AI gauges how healthy the reef is by comparing its sounds to the quieter sounds of a sick reef. The results are 92% accurate.
We calculate a load of different measures from these recordings, and then we present these measures to the AI, and it finds those patterns and relationships between those measures that us as a human are just too complex for us to ever recognize. And once it's found these, it's able to then repeat this when we give it new recordings.
It's not just that AI is better at analyzing the data, it can also analyze a lot of it, months' worth of recordings, quickly. Local marine biologists are excited about the possibilities.
Dengan kehadiran alat ini, saya yakin bisa membantu bagaimana mengefisiensikan waktu, efisiensi sumber daya manusia, dan efisiensi biaya terhadap pemantauan terumbu karang di seluruh Indonesia.
Coral reefs are one of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet, home to 25% of ocean species. They cover less than 1% of the Earth's surface, but they protect coastal communities, provide food, and generate billions for fisheries and tourism. But almost half of the world's coral reefs have been lost or severely damaged by climate change, pollution, and overfishing. And scientists say it's continuing to decline at an alarming rate. The team behind the AI study hopes their method and its findings can mitigate that.
Our next plan is to start sending out recorders around the world. So we're looking at Mexico, the Great Barrier Reef, the US Virgin Islands, all kinds of places that we're hoping to work with, where they have their own reef restoration projects going on, and figure out what's working and perhaps where things could be improved.
Working towards global cooperation, the AI health checks that began in Indonesia could lead to better environmental policies, protecting not just the world's oceans, but all life dependent on it. Damon Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The world's first museum about menstruation has opened in Taipei. The Red House has been set up by the not-for-profit advocacy group With Red. One of the group's main aims is to tackle the lack of access to menstrual products. With Red founder Vivi Lin says she hopes the museum will also help to eliminate the stigma surrounding periods.
Basically, period has been a forbidden topic. We spent like 3-5 years, and then we've seen a huge progress already happening here in Taiwan. We've seen a lot of different local governments having different policies related to period equity. So I think that's a very optimistic kind of situation. Currently, our service is around whole Taiwan. So every single city and counties in Taiwan have our service team, and we're servicing more than 500 different teenagers suffering from period poverty. We're cooperating with more than hundreds of schools coming from primary schools to universities to promote menstrual education.
After a decade of construction, the striking Taipei Performance Arts Center will finally open in Taiwan's capital this week. The opening performance is a Taiwanese opera by one of the country's most famous troupes. Louise Watt reports.
This iconic Taiwanese opera has a new stage. It's kicking off the very first season of a new cultural landmark. The Taipei Performing Arts Center has taken 10 years to build, and backers hope it will draw attention not just for how it looks, but also for what goes on inside. One of Taiwan's most renowned opera troupes, the Minghua Yuan Arts and Culture Group, will be performing their best-known opera, The 8 Immortals of Penglai, Zhongli of Han, starting on July the 2nd. It's a demanding show to prepare for.
很特殊的规定叫什么？每一个演员，主角的演员最少要背2个角色。
The opera tells the story of a Chinese mythological figure, Han Zhongli, a general of the Han dynasty, and his journey to becoming an immortal. The general is played by Sun Cui-feng, an actress known for playing male roles in such operas. But she shares this role with her daughter.
招前打头阵，我压后面，所以那前后的这个戏份跟剧情，都因为我们各自的优点，所以呢各自有发挥的空间。
The troupe has been going for 90 years, and with mother and daughter now sharing the main character, audiences will see the opera's heritage being passed on to another generation, in a setting built for the future. Chris Ma and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is replacing its trains with newer models. And as one of the country's decades-old services arrived at its destination for the very last time, train buffs were there for an emotional send-off. Stash Butler has the story.
The Juguang Express pulls into its final stop, ending more than 30 years of faithful service. It's the last of its kind to bear the model's signature folding doors. And on Tuesday, railway fans flooded here to Xinzhuang Station in southern Taiwan to say goodbye.
最后一次拍了嘛，这之前有拍过啦，这最后一次的感觉就是特别怀念吧，我以后看不到了。
The station chief was also caught up in the emotion of the occasion.
他在我9岁的时候，他就有开始跑了。他现在已经要跟他告别，当然有一点感情上。我当列车长的时候，他是正壮年的时候，他现在已经垂垂老矣了，所以有一点好像人生一样的一个一个感觉。
Taiwan's replacing its older trains with brand new models from Korea and Japan. That will boost capacity. But for Taiwan's train buffs, it's a bittersweet moment to watch this piece of Taiwanese railway history close its doors for the very last time. Patrick Chen and Stash Butler for TaiwanPlus.
Wimbledon is testing out technology to create hybrid grass tennis courts. Artificial fibres are stitched in with real grass, creating a grass surface that could be used in different climates. Hybrid grass has been used in professional football pitches for years, but is being newly tested by Wimbledon. If successful, it would also extend the grass court season in the UK. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally today, we leave you with images of a magnificent 1700-year-old Israeli mosaic. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.